Welcome back, everybody, to this episode of the Funky Intellect. Very happy to be talking about this topic and have our guest today. So I'll tell you a little bit about her. Her name is Dr. Alicia Hodge. She's a licensed clinical psychologist and speaker. Her mission and work centers around assisting people overcome limiting beliefs. Excited about that. She helps Black women pursue wellness and restoration, reminding them of who they are. I know that's right. She specializes in treatment of anxiety, and she launched the hashtag Slay Your Anxiety. I'm happy to have you here, specifically because, one, I love the girl power, Black women doing our thing. Mm-hmm. Also, the fact that you are focused on restoring our minds and focused on that self-care and also anxiety treatment because it seems like everybody's got it. Everybody's got anxiety.
I know. Everyone's felt anxiety at least 2 times.
Right. I think that the In and Out movie that just came out where one of the characters is anxiety, I think that's something that everybody was like, oh, yeah, I know a little something about that,
Yeah.
I'm excited about what we're going to uncover. So the reason we are here technically is to talk about letting go of what was, right? What we were supposed to, what was supposed to happen, what our lives were supposed to look like, what roads we thought we were going down. And I don't know about, you specifically, but I know I can't be the only one that has thought, man, I really tried to do everything right? But I am still not in the spot that they said or I expected to be in. So I decided that we needed to talk about this and get down to how to let that stuff go, because I personally have been holding on to a little bit. I'll be honest. I've been holding on to it, but I want to hear more about you in the work that you've done thus far surrounding anxiety and restoring. Actually, you tell me, restoring what specifically? I have an idea, but tell me.
No, that's a good question. So I've done this work, meaning therapy work, date myself, right? For a lot of years now, at least 10 years. And so I've spent a lot of time with people listening to what their concerns are, all different types of people, but really where I find myself now with my own practice is working with women, particularly around anxiety, because I find that it's something that's very treatable. And like you said, we've all experienced it. And a lot of times anxiety spins a lot of stories, a lot of lies, a lot of misconceptions, and you feel trapped. But I think in the work that I've done, I've seen how easy it is to release a lot of weight and self-criticism and burdens. So I really spent my time focusing on working with women on managing their anxiety and overcoming like a lot of negative thinking as it applies to everything. So like you said before, we've all had something not go the way that we thought it would go. And there can be a lot of burden, right? If we see that as a failure or if we see that as a stuck point, but there could also be a lot of freedom if we see it as an opportunity. I'm like, okay, I don't have one plan, but maybe I could search for another one.
Oh, reshaping that idea.
Exactly.
Oh, that's so important. I've had to learn to say, okay, Joy, well, maybe, just maybe you weren't supposed to be at point B. You were actually supposed to be at D because D had X, Y, Z, and you said you knew you needed that. You know what I mean? Like that.
Exactly.
That reshaping, to your point. Have you dealt with, and I want to say this answer's got to be yes. Tell me I'm not alone. But in your work, how many people, like a percentage, would you say are coming in attempting to say, look, Dr. Hodge, I did everything right. I went to school. I got the degrees. I did X, Y, Z. My career is not here. I got the man, the kids, and I'm still unhappy. Like, what percentage of people do you think come in that kind of need to look at letting go and reshaping?
I would say 70.
Oh,
70.
Okay.
Yeah. Because it starts to get very existential. Like you said, like if I've put in the work, I'd expect XYZ outcome. And I think that is true for some very important years of our life. And what I mean by that is school. Like school does have a formula. If I study, if I memorize, if I regurgitate that information, I will get this grade. And it's a pattern for success and it's like good reinforcement. But I think when we get to the other parts of our life that are tricky, that are not a formula, like you said, like relationship dynamics is not A plus B. sometimes climbing the ladder at work is not just about how much work you're putting in, it's about relationships or unfair treatment. So I think that when we start realizing like, oh, this formula is not working, it's frustrating. And it starts to also shake up our idea of like, but I had planned it out according to this formula. So now what?
Yeah. That formula thing is I think it's a huge thing for people. And I just really wanted to talk about like, how do we really start to decide what is supposed to be, right? Like, of course, you grow up and your parents are like, hey, go to school, you get a job. So at some point, you're raised to have some type of structure there. But is it simply societal where that just shapes us? Or is it a mix between that and desire?
Yeah, I think it's a combination. It's probably the best answer, meaning society has a lot of shoulds, all the way down to the way we look, right? So there's always going to be these unconscious or unspoken rules operating around us about like, this is what a happy life looks like. And so therefore you start to internalize, okay, I should do this, this, and this to get that life. But I think the real question that it could be uncomfortable at first is just asking yourself, like, whose rule, like, says who? Whose rule am I following? Is this society? Is this one of my parents? Is this one of my close friends? And do I agree with it? Is that the way that I actually want to live? Because once you realize you make the rules, then you can make adjustments that you're satisfied with.
Now, one of my questions is, what if you do decide that something, in this laundry list of things that we think should go a certain way? What if you say, okay, it's not going my way, but
yeah. That's a hard question. There's no one answer. I think it's probably the better way to put it.
Okay.
If someone came to me and posed that type of question, though, I would sort of maybe ask, how important is it you get it A? And B, how important is it that you get it the way you imagined?
Ooh.
Because
that's a good one.
Because I think there's a lot of alternative ways sometimes to get the thing that we want, but we get so stuck on like, it has to be this way. It has to go according to the script that I created. That now I'm even blocking off opportunities or chances to still get the satisfaction or the meaning of the thing, but maybe in a way that I didn't expect. There could be a way that's better than ours, but a lot of times we're like a little too nervous to test that out.
Okay. I mean, that's a very good point. That's a very good point. I think a lot of times for me, and let me just say, put out a disclaimer. I'm going to refer back to myself because I don't know what folks are, I don't want to speak for the man.
I mean, you're the expert of yourself. You can speak for yourself always.
Exactly. And I just think that the idea, I think it's going to always come back to reshaping. See, I could say the same thing. So say I want to be married. That's easy, right? Low hanging fruit. However, it's not with the person that I just dated or something like that. Right. But you still want a version of that. How do I let go of the relationship or the thing, whatever the item is, and then say, okay, let's reframe what it looks like. In letting go of that, is there a step of like, get to your point, getting to the root cause of, would you say that was the first step?
I think the first step is always returning back to yourself, meaning a lot of times we can get very focused on what somebody did or didn't do or is not doing. And if we at least can pull back to like, what can I control? Because I ultimately cannot control anyone else. A lot of times we try to, like with our behaviors or we try to do certain things that get a reaction or cause somebody to react the way we hope they do, but we really don't control that. So if you can focus on maybe mourning, like we talked about, mourning this idea, this picture of the way that you thought it was going to be, like giving yourself the grace and opportunity to mourn that, but then asking yourself, like, what did I want? Like, what was it about this relationship that I liked? Is that something that, are there character traits? Are there actions? Because the acceptance and the understanding that's not going to be with that person, that might require some processing, but it also doesn't necessarily mean you're cut off and now there's nothing else for you. I think it just ultimately means like reflecting on like what will I do to position myself to
Mhm.
get the thing? And of course, we know with like something like marriage that is complex. It's not necessarily, again, the
Right.
A plus B
Right.
type of scenario, but I also think our mindset determines a lot of not just outcome, but experience. You know, if I look at everything like this is it, every experience then becomes very pressured
Oh.
and
Mhm.
you can over romanticize. Like everything is just so serious versus I
Yeah.
think like this is a great experience. This is a great time.
Right.
I'm enjoying it and I'm grateful for it in a way that's different than like it has to go this way.
Right.
You know,
Don't
that's like the
decide
source.
it's the be all end all
Right.
in whatever it is. This is the job. This is the
Right.
car. This is
Right.
the person. You just
hmm
leave it open to
hmm
experience is what you're saying.
Yeah, as much as possible. Like, and I think a lot of times when people hear these concepts, they then swing to the other extreme of like, oh, so you're saying don't care, and I'm like, no, I'm not saying that either. You know, ultimately, I'm saying know yourself and know yourself enough to see like where is anxiety maybe running the ship here. Like, am I getting pressured?
Mhm.
Like to say this, I'm rehearsing what I'm gonna do.
Mhm.
I'm over analyzing what people say to me. A lot of it is just based in control. It would be nice if we could control our futures. If I could write something down and have it go
Sure.
exactly that, you know, that would be wonderful. But I think anxiety, you know, is found in the uncertainty. So when people are not sure, then you start to fill it in maybe with scary thoughts or scary ideas that then make you get more rigid. But if you could fill that space with maybe not even positive, but more neutral, helpful
Mhm.
thoughts, things will look different.
I I wonder, like, when I think of letting things go,
hmm
I kind of think of the anxiety of not knowing, and then
hmm
the anger of the disappointment of it not being the first draft,
mm
right? And so I often think, and tell me if I'm wrong, like those two, they're kind of a handshake at some point. Like they both are the same thing. You maybe can feel disappointed, but then also have angst with, okay, well, what does the second draft look like? Because I was supposed to be in the first draft, and the first draft failed me, or maybe didn't
Yeah.
fail, it just didn't go through. But
Yeah.
the anger or the disappointment that comes with it, does that feed the anxiety? Or I guess I'm trying to figure out what's everybody's steps, I
Yeah.
guess, are different.
How do they go to? Yeah. I think the reality is that you can definitely feel more than two, sometimes three, right? And more things at one time. And so sometimes one might feel more prominent, like I'm very scared and afraid, but I'm also angry. And especially, I find when anger is in the picture, I consider anger to be a secondary emotion, meaning there's something else first. And that could be I am disappointed and now I'm angry, or I'm sad that that person isn't who I thought they was, and now I'm angry.
Mhm.
Um, Anger is just, you know, I like to usually just describe that anger is more socially acceptable. And so a lot of us can relate more to anger, but typically we're talking about another emotion underneath the anger that came first that maybe is more vulnerable or difficult.
Okay.
But they can both exist at the same time. So I don't know if necessarily one fuels the other. What I do focus on when I'm talking to people about anxiety, the way that I do work is their thoughts. So I'm really asking, what were you telling yourself? What were you believing? Because I want to see what's tied to the anxious feelings. Because if we can alter your thoughts, then we could then, right, in theory, alter your feelings.
Another question I have is, when you feel like you have wasted time, I have heard people
Mm-hmm.
say, man, I've been with that job 4 years, right? Or I've done da 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 da. And sometimes people stay around because they put a
hmm
little work
I put in
equity,
some
sweat
work.
equity. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so what do you tell people when they realize it's time to move around? The
hmm
second draft is coming, whether you like it or not,
hmm
but they're stuck on, I'm just so built up and frustrated because I feel like I wasted my time.
Hey, Funky Intellect crew, ready to elevate your everyday style? Say hello to Mia in Stone, your go to for jewelry that's bold, beautiful and brilliantly sustainable. Think precious metals like gold and silver paired with dazzling lab created diamonds that shine just as bright as you do. Whether you're rocking jeans or a power suit, Mia and Stone has the perfect piece to make your look pop. Head to miaandstone.com and use code funky15 for 15% off, because why save that sparkle for special occasions only?
Yeah. Again, right, we're talking about reframing perspective and perspective shift. And so that would be the first thing, right? Is to even saying that. Like there's some times where I have a client who's telling me their perception of something, and I say, like, would you be open to start even saying the story differently? Would you be open to not say that anymore? And we can talk about something else. Like you can even say, I feel like I wasted my time, because that's more expressive of your perspective than what is a truth. And so it gives you the idea of saying, like, yeah, well, one way to look at it is wasting my time, but one way to look at it is I definitely know what I won't be doing ever again. I know what a toxic job looks like now. I have more than enough experience to reject or have certain boundaries around what I'm going to accept from other people. Because the reality of it is that when you look at it, is that thought helpful to you? And if you can say no, right? If you can say no, then that hopefully is at least enough motivation to say, like, okay, well, what could I think instead?
How
What would
can
be useful
I
to me?
how can I reframe this idea? I love that. Maybe it's okay, well, it took me 3 years, but I definitely got clear on what I don't want or what I do want,
Yeah.
and I won't have to revisit draft 1 again. I'll remember it, taking it into the second edition. I love that. All about reframing for sure. So let's talk about, is it necessary to reframe and move on when you're writing that new chapter or that new edition? Like what are the actual steps that you think most people should know when it comes to, okay, I did the thing, I'm going to let it go. I have accepted, I am reframing, I'm going to talk about it positively as possible. What, because I know that might take some time.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, changing the things you say, consistently, especially about a thing that you are a little
You feel
frustrated
strongly about. Yeah.
Yes. So, what do you think the steps of reframing and letting go looks like after we decide my mindset has shifted? I am going to let this go. There's some tips that you can give people that are tangible or action based that kind of help you shift and push yourself along.
Yeah. I would say the first is to give yourself credit, right? To start off in the space of saying, like, I'm doing something hard. I'm about to restate my story, even though I've been telling the story for 3 years, and acknowledge that it might be difficult. And it's about practice. It's not about being perfect. And so the idea isn't just because I've decided now to let go, it will be gone. I'll still might struggle with a little bit, but I'm actually doing something about it now. And that's, that kind of references back to that idea about wasted time.
Yeah.
You don't have, the most that you could say to yourself is, well, I'm not going to waste time anymore. Like, I'm starting now.
Yeah.
Yes, it was hard for me for the 3 years, but I'm finally ready. So I'm going to do my best to practice thinking differently, knowing that, I might get pulled back to the old story because it's just so familiar. But if I can have grace with myself, I think that's actually where people see progress, is around like how you treat yourself and how you allow yourself to make your own change, right? Because it is up to you and it's not easy work, but really to give yourself credit and support yourself, right? Like be your own safe space.
That's
Helpful.
good. Giving yourself credit. I mean, I just want to throw the cards up in the air and walk away because sometimes I hear people say, I mean, I guess they flip it on themselves. Like, I should be further along. I should be over this by now. I was already 3 years in, or, man, giving yourself the credit that you are letting this go, and it won't be immediate. Oh,
Yeah.
that's good. That is good. So usually you hear people talk about journaling and grounding and taking a walk and starting to be good to yourself or better to yourself and nourishing yourself. Have you seen one thing work over another when it comes to, okay, I'm moving into the second phase, I done let it go, or does it just simply depend on the person?
It definitely depends on the person. I think that I will say, I think breathing, although it's very cliche, is a universal human thing that works for everyone. Whether it's just to reset you in a moment, whether it's to settle you in a time of like extreme upset or overwhelm, breathing just like resets your brain and your body like nothing else. As long as you're practicing, I encourage people to practice it often because it's very hard to practice good quality breathing when you're upset if you haven't practiced it before that.
Okay.
So it's just, something like a centering practice. I encourage people to do. It could be as soon as you wake up, when you go to bed, anytime, anywhere. Breathing is accessible.
Okay.
But I also, I think that something that I've been telling people about that is unique is think about who you are. So I'm someone who loves social media.
Okay.
And like a lot of when you're kind of in your mental health training, they kind of like traditionally say like that doesn't like have a place here, or like you shouldn't be on social media, things like that. And I just never agree with that because I love social media. I had considered making an app. It's funny for my dissertation, but this is before people had like mental health apps. A lot of them, people were like, that's such a weird topic. And then like now, right, there's a million mental health apps. So
And we are talking about it everywhere.
exactly. But that being said, sometimes I tell my clients, if like they don't want to do it on their main account, make another social media account and only look up stuff that's relevant to your healing, whatever that is. So it could be funny videos. It could be stuff that's all about yoga. It could be hair videos for all I care, but like just things that are positive and uplifting only so that the algorithm just creates this place that you can go when you want to scroll, but you're not doing something counterproductive in the sense of like scrolling and feeling worse or looking at stuff that like is negative content. Like you're just looking at somewhere that you want to be that's encouraging you, like you could do this, is supportive. So that's like a unique thing that I recently thought of.
That's so
That
smart.
people
I
can
love
do.
that. I feel like that's so people sometimes I send stuff to folks and they're like, Joy, where did you get this from? And I'm like, look, I'm
What part of
telling
they're
y'all.
like, what side of the algorithm are you on?
Exactly. I'm like, I'm here for a good time. I'm here for a good time. It's just going to be funny. And I love that idea. It's kind of like a happiness lifeline or
Yeah,
something
like
like
a
that
little
where you can
curated
just,
space just for you.
you dropping the gems. Okay. I
Yeah.
absolutely, man, I love that. Okay. Breathing, and making a happiness social media account or a self-care social media page. I love that. I think both of those things are super attainable to do after you decide to shift your mind and say, okay, girl, it's cool. We're
Yeah.
here, but we're going to get to wherever we want to be. And I think that is probably two of the most reasonable things I've heard.
Thank you. I also thought of something as you were talking. So, right, like there might be people who are still in between, who are like, my one foot in that I'm not ready yet, and one foot in the like, I'm trying to get out of here. I would encourage you to make a running list of why you want to get out of this space, right? So that when you can build enough of a case for yourself straight out of your own mouth about why you're ready. So you could be like, I'm tired of crying every day, or I don't want to be tired anymore when I come home. Like whatever the problems, the pain points are of your situation, because then I think you could start to see like the cost versus the benefit in black and white. Like, you know what? Yeah, it's uncomfortable to try to move into this new space, but like, look what it's costing me. And then that might push you and remind you when you might go back
Yeah.
as to why you don't want to go backwards.
That's good too. That's good too. It's kind of like breaking up with somebody and you'll like either block them or change the name of I tell people change their name in your phone to like whatever feeling or whatever negative thing that they did to remind yourself, don't answer that phone. Don't get off
Right.
the
That's
line.
what's on the other side of this.
Exactly. Exactly. So I think that's so smart. Listening to you talk, I can just see the stages of, it was supposed to be this way. Now I'm upset, I'm frustrated, and I have this anxiety of letting it go. And then I can clearly see the acceptance of, you know what, it's fine. It's fine. Like, let's just go move to the next step. And these are all the little, kind of like this is a weird reference, but you know, when you play Mario and you get the mushrooms and then you get bigger.
Leveling up.
Yes. It's just like, okay, that lifeline that you're making on social media, that breathing is the little mushroom, and just level yourself up so you can get to the next stage.
Yeah.
I love
and
that.
it really is a practice thing. Like, you do grow and you get stronger, like, over time. It's not a straight up line. I think it's something that's you're worth investing in yourself. And so even, though we might have devoted a certain amount of time, like, it's never too late to wake up and change and do something different. And so, it's not worth the energy of being self-critical. Like, I can't believe I spent all this time. And it's like, well, believe it. We did it. We moving on.
Like, right. Yep. Accept it. Okay. So you said it's not worth the energy. Okay. My next question, one of my final questions is, what happens if we don't let go of that thing? Well, like, what happens when we don't accept that whatever we thought was supposed to be did not? I mean, it affects, I would assume it affects our minds and our bodies. But what do you think about what's the, I guess, the risk in not actually accepting and letting it go?
That's a really good word. I think it is a risk because it can range, right? I think you named the higher outcome, which is, we know chronic stress is literally a portion of a lot of preventable death, right? In our society, like, in terms of health problems, like, stress is oftentimes a factor in the progression of a disease. So, thinking about it, I know that sounds a little scary, but it's true, right? The idea of, like, what can I do in my life to reduce stress? If I have things that I'm holding on to that I don't need to, let's start there. Like, what's in my scope that I can control, which is my thoughts. All the way down to just it being a barrier and limiting. I'm a believer in, like, removing any barriers that we have as much as possible to be, like, our fullest self. And so you're running the risk of still not getting what you want, or practicing a lifestyle of, like, perpetual dissatisfaction. Because if you're constantly focused on, right, what I wish I had or what I could have, like, what will you be satisfied with eventually?
I might feel a little triggered. I'm going to be very honest. Like, my God, have I felt perpetual dissatisfaction? I don't know if it stems simply from letting things go, but I definitely can get down with that idea. And I've conversations with friends and things like that. I can hear us say, it was good, but it wasn't good enough.
Yeah.
Like, could have been that.
Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with wanting more, right? And I'm not necessarily saying we should not have goals or things that we want, but I think should is it's just a limiting word, because should implies that there's a rule. Because oftentimes if I do get a client and they say, I should be farther in life, I'm like, okay, well, where should you be? And usually once you really sit down, a lot of people are like, I don't know. And I'm like, well, then we can create standards for you and then ask, are they reasonable? But you have to be careful not to have these, like, very vague, it could be better ideas when you actually don't even know what you're reaching for. It just keeps you unhappy with where you are.
Okay, so you telling the girls, get specific, but stay open.
Yeah, try to get specific, right? Because then I think that gives you an idea of, like, this is what I'm going for. But then ask yourself personally and truly, how much of this do I actually control, so that I'm not leaning so heavily on myself.
Smart. And this is why you got the doctor in front of you. Oh, yes. Oh, my goodness. Okay. I love that. I think that just this whole idea of should and what was is, it's kind of big. It's like a big plate of spaghetti. And I feel like we are picking through noodle by noodle, thinking like, that should have been firm. That should have been too soft. And it's like, okay, girl, put the spaghetti up and go get you some steak and potatoes.
Yeah. Yeah, just get, like you said, make your own rule. If you don't want the spaghetti, then go get something else.
I love that. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I want people to be able to find you and follow your practice. Of course, you're in DC, but tell people where they can find you or anything that you have coming up that you want people to be a part of. Tell people what you have going on.
Yeah, thank you. So my platform of choice is Instagram, but you can find me all over the place at Help Me Hodge, which is like my last name. And I post tips, reels, videos. I also have a newsletter. So my website is www.slayyouranxiety.com. And you could go there and learn more about me, and see about speaking if you're interested. So my booking information is there. If you're interested in therapy, there's also a link as well. But I have a newsletter, a little Slay Your Anxiety merchandise. So a little bit of everything, I think, just because I have a lot of interest, and I think I want people to understand and normalize just talking about anxiety and mental wellness overall. You can find me, on the internet.
I love that. I'm going to have to give me like a little water bottle or a t-shirt or something like that to support. I appreciate you, man, so much. And I think that people... and the whole anxiety, at this point, I'm sure people are tired of hearing about anxiety. We have anxiety about hearing about anxiety. Right. But I really do think that people will get something from this. I want women to just relax, release, and move forward. And I think you gave some of the best steps that I could ever hope for.
Thank you for giving me a chance to share this information, because like you said, I think everyone deserves to have that. And it really starts with you considering how to reframe your perspective.
As usual, don't forget to check out this episode's playlist on Spotify or YouTube by clicking the link in the bio.